Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies lost Game 2 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was not as bad as Game 1. It also wasn't close at all. Yes, they pushed back into the game in the third quarter and got within 8. Tiny celebration that they got within 8. They were only outscored by 4 points after the first quarter. We can build on this, but still, the game was not close as the Thunder won by 19. So on today's episode, I'm going to talk about the loss. Before I do, just a reminder, if you want to support the creation of this show, you can do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join up at Patreon, you can join my listener Slack channel. We have a Grizzlies fan Slack channel. We were talking about all kinds of stuff before, during, and after the game. So if you want access to that, you want an additional bonus episode every month, and if you want to support the creation of these episodes, do that. Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. Falling down 1-0 in a playoff series, typically the team down 0-1 comes out, swinging. They understand their backs are against the wall. They have to correct the things that went wrong in Game 1 and basically play for their season. Well, I don't think the Grizzlies did that. They came out horribly in the first quarter. They were down 13-2 after losing in humiliating fashion in Game 1. After getting outscored by 51, the Grizzlies came out and missed their first 10 shots. They fell down 13-2. Then they were down 22-9. At that point, they were 3 for 20 from the field. Maybe you could say they were competing. They seemed to be generating okay offensive looks, but once again, nothing was going in. So after having this horrible shooting game in Game 1, in the first quarter, you had Ja Morant going 0 for 6. He missed his first 6 shots of the game. Jaren missed his first 3 shots of the game, so you add that to his 2 for 13 performance last game. In the first quarter, Jaren finished 1 for 5. Desmond Bane finished 1 for 5. Ja was 0 for 6. It was all very eerily similar in some ways to Game 1. In Game 1, you were only losing 21-15, but then the Thunder finished the first quarter strong, opened up a lead. In this game, you were down 22-15. Same thing. Thunder finished the quarter strong, got up by 15. The maybe tiny difference in Game 2, they didn't sub Ja Morant out as early. Ja almost played the entire first quarter. He subbed out with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter in Game 1. This time, he played until the final minute of the quarter. Ja Morant played 20 minutes in the first half. So that's a change. In Game 1, he only played 17 minutes in the first half. But after the first quarter, the score was 32-17, and the Grizzlies were 6 for 27 from the field as a team, including 1 for 9 on three-pointers, meaning through the first 5 quarters of this series, they'd been outscored by 66 points. They were 6 for 42 on three-pointers that weren't from behind half court. That's 29.9% through 5 quarters. And your big three, after having a horrible Game 1, was 2 for 16 in that first quarter. Now, if you want to be optimistic, you could say maybe they turned a page there. After the first 5 quarters of the series, they turned a page. Second quarter was much better. Third quarter, they actually won the quarter. They were competitive in quarters 2, 3, and 4. Maybe it was a long adjustment period to get up to the level of play that's going to be needed to compete against this Thunder team. That's the silver lining approach, the glass half full approach. The not glass half full approach is the Grizzlies have now lost 11 straight games to the Thunder. They've lost all 6 games to the Thunder this year by an average of 24 points. And quite consistently, the Grizzlies cannot score on the Thunder. Now, I'm going to get into the second and third quarters where those things get a little bit better, where the Grizzlies make a good percentage, a great percentage of their shots in some of those quarters. But the Grizzlies scored 99 points in this basketball game. That is tied for their lowest scoring output of the regular season. In the regular season, remember, the Grizzlies were held under 100 points one time. They scored 99 points against the Trailblazers. Now, in this game, they were held to 99 points. In the first game, they were held to 80 points, meaning, of course, the Thunder have already held the Grizzlies under 100 points more times in this series than the Grizzlies were held under 100 points for the entire regular season. But speaking of the consistent way that the Thunder have been beating or thumping the Grizzlies, right now the Grizzlies have 4 of their 6 lowest scoring games of the year, including the postseason. They're against the Thunder. They scored 106 or less in 5 of the 6 matchups. In that 6th matchup, they went off for 112 points. But the Grizzlies consistently cannot score at a level needed to hang with the Thunder. Ja Morant has trouble scoring on this team. The defenders they can throw at Ja. Lou Dort hounding him. Cason Wallace off the bench sometimes. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander barely has to guard Ja. He doesn't really do it at all. Because of that, Ja Morant is not getting layups. He's not getting to the rim. Not only is he not beating his guy, but even when he does, it's too crowded in there because everyone's sagging off. The Grizzlies right now, they don't have the roster to surround Ja to maybe open up some more scoring opportunities. Like Ja Morant, after missing his first 6 shots, ended up with 23 points. He had 23 points, 6 assists, and 5 turnovers. But every one of Ja's made buckets was, at least primarily, they were all difficult floaters and leaners. He did end up hitting a couple of 3-pointers. I mean, they're going under the screens all the time on Ja, daring him to make 3-pointers. But when Ja gets in the paint, he is not able to get layups ever. And that is his bread and butter. I mean, his super skill, one of his super skills is being able to get to the rim over and over, getting up that quick release left-handed layup where he blows by a guy. We haven't seen that yet in this series because Ja does not have an advantage against these Oklahoma City Thunder defenders. And also, neither does Desmond Bane. He's running into the same issues. Jaren, he's finding it tough sledding out there, but at least Jaren had a huge bounce-back game at the very least. Jaren scored 26 points in this game, shook off the slow start, shook off early foul trouble. I mean, we're not unfurling the mission accomplished banner just yet for Jaren and his 26 points because once again, you know, he had serious foul trouble in the first half, goes to the bench early in the second quarter. He does come back in, thankfully, with about 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. Also does not end up fouling out. Good job, Jaren, there. But still, you know, you're down by 18 at halftime. Jaren has battled foul trouble, isn't scoring that well. These are still issues for the Grizzlies. They're still issues for Jaren in the postseason. But the 26 points for Jaren, that is the 3rd most points he's ever scored in a playoff game, only behind the Game 1 performance against the Warriors and the Game 1 performance against the Lakers. He made 9 of his final 12 field goal attempts. He was finally getting that floater going and that hook going. He was one of the best players in the NBA this season at converting on those floaters. So it was promising to see Jaren be resilient after the performance he had in Game 1. And also, again, after the performances he's had in previous playoff games. I've been really harping on Jaren recently about his history of poor playoff performances. I did misspeak last episode. I miscounted. I said in Jaren's 12 previous playoff games, he'd shot 33% or worse in 9 of them. It's only 8 of them. Still not good. Jaren raised his overall playoff field goal percentage from 38.9% to 39.9% in this game. So still not 40% yet. I also pointed out how Dillon Brooks has a higher scoring average on the Grizzlies in the playoffs than Jaren Jackson Jr. does. Dillon averaged 16 points per game on the Grizzlies in the playoffs while shooting 38% from the field. Of course, those numbers hugely juiced by the playoff series against the Jazz, where Dillon was just monstrous, scoring like crazy. So I merely provided those stats as a comparison point where everyone's saying, hey, Dillon's shooting us out of playoff games. Meanwhile, Jaren only has a field goal percentage 1% better than what Dillon did in his time on the Grizzlies. Now, in that series against the Lakers, I mean, Dillon shot 31%. And yes, probably did shoot them out of the series. Jaren, now up to 40% on the series against the Thunder after this 10-for-17 performance in Game 2. Jaren, if he plays like this, which is basically what we expected from his regular season, this is, I think, good enough, and you now need Ja Morant and Desmond Bane to meet him at this level. Also, you need the bench and the supporting cast to also come through. That feels like a tall ask. Like, Ja's game was okay under the circumstances. Not a good game by any stretch of the imagination, but possibly okay. Desmond shook off his slow start. Again, every single player had a slow start for the Grizzlies as they failed to score in the first quarter. Desmond ended up with a double-double. He had 19 points, made 6 out of his 12 attempts after the first quarter. He got his second playoff double-double, grabbed a playoff career-high 12 rebounds. Only one turnover, but it was a bad one. He got his pocket picked that led directly to a layup. And that actually, I mean, that's a big storyline from this game. It was a storyline we knew coming into this series. One of the most important statistics for the Grizzlies and the Thunder was the turnover battle. The fact that the Thunder were the best at forcing turnovers and the Grizzlies were bad at turning the basketball over in the regular season. Also, the Thunder are really good at transition defense. They don't turn the ball over much, and they limit the opponent's opportunities for these plays where you have a high expected points. And guess what? The Grizzlies got nothing. Desmond Bane had a steal in the fourth quarter that led to a breakaway layup. That was the Grizzlies' first fast break basket of the game. I'm pretty certain that means now the Grizzlies have, I think, one fast break point in the first 3 quarters of both of these games. That's total. The Thunder had 25 points off of turnovers. The Grizzlies finished with 6. And again, 5 of those basically after the game was already over. The Grizzlies had 3 fast break points. The Thunder had 21. If you lose the possession battle that horribly against the Thunder, you have absolutely no chance. Also, we thought maybe one of the areas the Grizzlies could have an advantage over the Thunder was offensive rebounding. You're not winning the offensive rebounding battle either. The Thunder are beating you on second chance points, and they are destroying you on points off of turnovers and fast break points. Like going back to the second and third quarters where the Grizzlies offensively played pretty well. The Grizzlies made 8 out of their first 9 field goal attempts of the second quarter. You had Ja, you had Desmond, you had Jaren getting in the paint and scoring. And despite that, you didn't really cut into the lead. The lead actually grew in the second quarter, despite the fact that for the quarter you shot 68% as a team. The Grizzlies scored 35 points in the second quarter, shot 68%, and lost the quarter because they turned the basketball over something like 5 times, and every turnover directly led to an Oklahoma City Thunder breakaway layup. These were the pick 6 variety of turnovers. So by not protecting the basketball, despite the fact that the Grizzlies were making their shots and scoring, they lost the quarter. And some of that also was the Thunder three-point shooting in the first half. The Thunder made 12 three-pointers. The Grizzlies only made 4 three-pointers. 1 three-pointer made in the first quarter, 3 three-pointers made in the second quarter. Also, that's another storyline for this series. The Grizzlies just can't make threes. They had 10 made threes, and I don't think very much of it is shooting luck. You look at the shooters the Grizzlies have. They don't have them. They played Luke Kennard in this game. Luke Kennard was not in the rotation in the first 3 quarters in Game 1. They went with him early in this game. He played a very long stretch in the first half. I'm guessing that was an adjustment they had going into the game. Maybe it was an in-game adjustment looking at how the first 6 minutes of the game went. They're like, man, we got to have some shooting out here. we got to have some more offense. Now, Luke only got 1 3-pointer up. He missed it. But at the very least, at least when Luke Kennard's on the court, he has gravity, even when he's not shooting. But you look at the Grizzlies' options for shooters right now. You have Desmond Bane, who has a great three-point percentage in his career. He made 2 out of 7 threes in this game. By the way, Desmond Bane passed Dylan Brooks and now has the 3rd most made three-pointers in Grizzlies franchise history. Also, by the way, Ja tied Dylan Brooks. He is a 1 3-pointer behind Desmond Bane in the all-time Grizzlies playoff ranks for made three-pointers. But you have Desmond Bane, elite shooter. Great playoff numbers. I think it's like 42% for the playoffs on three-pointers for Desmond Bane. Beyond that, you have Jaren, very questionable postseason three-point shooting numbers. You have Ja, who's okay, but again, everyone's going under his screens. He doesn't provide the gravity on the perimeter. And then theoretically you have Luke, but like the Thunder aren't worried about Luke. So maybe you have Luke because you need him there. But then beyond that, there's no shooting. Santi Aldama has made some threes in his brief playoff career, but like Scottie Pippen, he made 2 out of 7. He's now 2 for 11 on playoff three-pointers. Zach Edey is not going to shoot. Marvin Bagley, when he plays, he's not going to shoot. John Conchar, more on Conchar in a second, but like John Conchar, he's probably not going to shoot, and when he does, he's going to miss. John Conchar's now 1 for 14 in his career in the postseason on three-pointers. That's 7%. I'll go ahead and tell you, of every player in NBA history who's taken at least 10 three-pointers in the playoffs, John is bottom 10 all-time in three-point percentage. Of course, some guys didn't used to shoot three-pointers. I'd say in the three-point era, he might be peerless as far as his three-point percentage in the postseason. But there's just no spacing on this team. There's just flat-out no spacing. Because of that, the Thunder, they make three-pointers at a great rate. They have a bunch of guys who make three-pointers. And when you're losing the turnover battle, when you're losing the possession battle, and then you're losing the three-point battle, it's a tough formula. Now, the third quarter, it got better. In the third quarter, the Grizzlies actually won the quarter. They took care of the basketball, only 2 turnovers. They held the Thunder to 20 points. Now, maybe you'd say just 3-point variance. The Thunder missed all 8 of their 3-point attempts in the third quarter, but I'll take it. I was hosting a watch party in Nashville. Awesome turnout. Tons of people were there. We got very excited when the Grizzlies cut it to 8. Thought maybe we had a prayer, but turns out we did not. The Thunder eventually found their three-point shooting stroke in the fourth quarter. They started the fourth quarter on a 14-2 run, eventually blew that lead back out to 23 points, and the Grizzlies don't even cover. They end up losing the game by 19. Anyways, let's take a quick break right now, and then I'll come back with some more stats and talk about Zach Edey, John Conchar, and just the overall roster and kind of how we got here. All right, I talked mainly about our big 3 so far. Each of them notably played 20 minutes apiece in the second half. I think that's going to be needed. Heavy minutes for our best players. Beyond that, all right, so Zach Edey and Scottie Pippen Jr., they get the start once again. Will they change this up for the home game on Thursday night? Home game 3 at 8:30 p.m. local. By the way, we are not doing a watch party in Nashville for that one, but Nobles will have the game on with sound. So if you want to watch the game over at Nobles, they will have the sound on for you, the game on the big screen and most of the other screens that aren't showing the NFL draft. Feel free to watch the game over there. But will you change up the starting lineup? Because right now the starting lineup is not scoring. Flat out not scoring. And with the Thunder's length and defensive ability, they're able to really hamper Jaren and Desmond and Ja, and a lot of it's because you don't have to worry about Scottie Pippen Jr. or Zach Edey. Like, Scottie missed his first 3 shots of the game, just like everybody else. Everyone missed their shots in the first quarter, meaning that he had missed 11 straight shots if you go back to game 1. He eventually banked in a running floater. He made his first 3-pointer of the series right before halftime. But Scottie finishes with 13 points. He's 4 for 12 from the field, including 2 out of 7 on three-pointers. He has 4 assists. So in 2 playoff games, Scotty is 5 for 21 on his field goal attempts. Now, then there's Zach Edey. The Thunder are not worried about Zach Edey. Zach Edey is not having the impact on rebounding. Offensively, he's a 0 right now. Zach had 4 points. He did not attempt a shot in the second half. He was 2 for 3 on his field goal attempts, 4 points, had 7 rebounds. He did block 2 shots. Right now, Zach Edey for the series, he's averaging 4 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. By means of comparison, Xavier Tillman, starting against the Lakers in 2023, Xavier Tillman in that series averaged 8.7 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. Right now, Zach Edey's at 4 points per game. Will Zach match Xavier Tillman's massive 8.7 point per game output in the last playoff series the Grizzlies had? I mean, maybe you could say they're not looking for Zach, but I mean, post-ups for Zach Edey in this series, absolute death. He's not going to do anything on them. There even were some turnovers where, like, Luke Kennard tried to throw Zach Edey the ball, and Zach Edey, you could say he's not accustomed to getting past the ball. That's why he pulled his hands away. But, like, Zach Edey pulls his hands away, this ends up being a turnover that goes to a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander made three-pointer. Like, Zach Edey is struggling in this series. This series is not for him. He can't defend this Thunder team, and he's not providing you the rebounding you need. But if you took him off, like, what else are you going to do? You're already not winning the rebounding battle. Are you going to go with someone like Santi Aldama? Santi Aldama's transition defense is, I don't want to say humiliating. I guess I'll say humiliating. That's the word that stuck in my head. He does the Matador defense. He gives off the impression that you or I could score on him. He just gets out of the way on defense. Anytime the Thunder put their head down and drive, it feels like they're going to get a layup or a dunk. It's a very frustrating thing to watch. So you need Santi to be this elite offensive player to make up for that. Santi, not so much an elite offensive player. He scored 10 points on 11 shots. And now you think about the roster. I guess I can talk about it now because, like, you think about Santi Aldama's upcoming restricted free agency. I mean, this thing has been a pendulum swinging back and forth. Before the season started, we were like, oh, I understand why they didn't do an extension with Santi because he was pretty bad last year. What are you going to offer him? I mean, you're not going to offer him like $12 million a year because what if he's bad? But then he had a really good first half of the season. You're like, wow, Santi's going to get paid this offseason. He's a 6th man of the year candidate. And then the second half of the season, he shot 33%, or at least post All-Star break. He shot 33% from 3. And then you see him in this series, and he seems, I mean, I keep thinking of the word unplayable, but we don't have guys to play. But like, Santi has not been very good. His defense is atrocious. They're getting lit up when he's on the court. So I don't know what the answers are. I mean, some of this comes to the limited roster flexibility you have. If you don't re-sign Santi Aldama, you're still not going to have like room to sign anybody else. You'll still just have the MLE. Like, you're going to have the mid-level exception available to you, whether you keep Santi Aldama or not. So you kind of need to keep Santi. You might want to say they need to sign him to a bigger number or as a big of number as they can stomach so they have any matching salary. Reminder, there's no matching salary on this roster. There's Brandon Clark coming off injury once again, negative value perceived around the league. And then you have your big three. You're not trading Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, or Jaren Jackson Jr., despite the fact the national media is starting to talk about it. I mean, it's a legitimate conversation asking what is the ceiling on a Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. core. The ceiling's pretty low if you're not going to put other good players around them. I was texting with someone who works for the Grizzlies, and, we were talking about how many players on the Grizzlies would start and or play for the Thunder. How many people who played for the Grizzlies last night would play for the Thunder? If you count higher than 3, I think you're lying to yourself. Zach Edey and Scottie Pippen Jr. aren't getting in the game on this Thunder team, and we're starting them. Yes, Jalen Wells is hurt. Yes, Brandon Clark is hurt, but like, those guys, they would not have made a difference. Vince Williams Jr. and G.G. Jackson, players you seemingly bet on in the offseason, unplayable. They both got DMPs in this game. So what they do going forward, they're very limited. And keeping Santi, you probably need to, just because you probably can't do much of anything else. Luke Kennard, like I said, he played a huge stretch in the second quarter, back in the rotation. I guess you have to play him, but I don't know. Maybe like if you do change the starting lineup, would Luke maybe start? Would John Conchar start? So John Conchar, I said I was going to talk more about him. John Conchar has some amazing non-scoring stats. John Conchar has played 143 minutes in the playoffs. John Conchar has appeared in numerous playoff games for the Grizzlies. We're talking 16 playoff appearances. John Conchar has a total of 15 points in the playoffs. Total. There have been 1,758 players in NBA history to play at least 100 minutes in the playoffs. John Conchar is 1,757th in total points with 15. A guy named Juwan Morgan, who I frankly don't remember, is last. If you raise it to 120 minutes played, he scored the fewest points ever of any player to play at least 120 minutes in the postseason. 1 for 14 on three-pointers in Conchar. Now, some of Conchar's minutes have been garbage time, frankly. Hey, we're losing by 40 to the Lakers. Go out there. Light it up. Hey, we're winning by 30 against the Warriors. Go score 9 points, John Conchar. That's right. 9 of his 15 points came in one game. But unfortunately, there's been a full handful of appearances where Conchar's playing regular rotation minutes in a playoff game, and he can't score. And if he's shooting 7% from three, that's a little bit difficult. And then Marvin Bagley played. After being the lone bright spot in game one, Marvin had very little impact in this one. He took 1 field goal attempt, had 1 rebound, and 2 turnovers. But also, we're talking about Marvin Bagley. I feel like it's worth saying, even if Marvin Bagley probably had the best game of anybody in game one, no one ever intended Marvin Bagley to play for this team. Zach Kleiman had no intention that Marvin Bagley would play for this team, that he would be in your top 8 or top 9 as they went with a 9-man rotation in game 2. Marvin Bagley was purely matching salary for a salary dump. Very importantly, he had no money going into next year. Marvin Bagley is an expiring salary, and then you go to the roster once again. Maybe before we get to the roster, it is worth pointing out, maybe it is just a roster thing or it's a talent thing that the Thunder players are better. But I also feel like to everyone watching game 2, it seemed as if the Thunder were outworking the Grizzlies, that they were out hustling the Grizzlies. It looked like the Thunder's role players beat our best players towards the basketball over and over and over. You had Isaiah Joe chasing down long rebounds. You had the ball going basically right between Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey's hands into Isaiah Hartenstein's hands. You had guys out jumping John Conchar for rebounds. It seems like beyond the issues we have guarding their best players, beyond the issues that we have getting off good looks on offense, it seems like the Thunder are playing much harder. And again, maybe it's talent. Maybe that's what it looks like when there's a mismatch of talent. But you think about the roster, and as currently constructed, it somewhat exacerbates the issues that we have with our main players. Like, Ja Morant needs to be surrounded by spacers. Yeah, the Zach Edey pick and roll is pretty good. Of course, Edey is a tremendous screener. But if he clogs up the paint for other people, if he provides zero spacing threat whatsoever, where Edey's man can sag off of him, if Edey sets the screen and then the defender can actually go under and provide some help on Ja, well then that mitigates or that erases some of the advantage created by the screening. You think about Jaren Jackson Jr.'s limitations as a rebounder. You would want him to be paired up with probably a spacing big who's great at rebounding. Now, those are hard to find. But you look at the reason Marvin Bagley's playing is we only have 4 bigs on the entire roster. When they did the Marcus Smart salary dump, they had 1 roster spot available. They went with Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens checked 0 boxes for the thing you thought you possibly needed with that roster. You're like, shouldn't we maybe have an emergency ball handler if Ja Morant gets hurt again, or another big, since we only have 3 bigs if you don't count Marvin Bagley? I wasn't counting him at that point. If we have Edie and Aldama and Jaren, shouldn't we use another big? And again, maybe there's no big available, but to me, it all goes back to the root of just the roster, of just not having the right options alongside your guys, at going with Jalen Wells and Zach Edey as your solutions in the offseason. You look at just the roster, the year-over-year attrition of talent around your big 3. Turn it back to the 2023 series against the Lakers. You had, of course, Ja and Jaren and Desmond. Santi Aldama was playing minutes. Luke Kennard was playing minutes in that series. You think about the other players on the team. The supporting cast in that series: Dylan Brooks, of course, shot 31%. Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones, Xavier Tillman, David Roddy. He was actually 9th in minutes. I mean, that's not great. Reminder, David Roddy was a minus 32 in his 76 minutes against the Lakers. So while that 2023 team, it wasn't ideal. I mean, reminder, that 2023 team we knew wasn't good enough. Without Steven Adams and without Brandon Clark, you're like, wow, they're not good enough. You we have to retool this. But then you look at the players who played and you say, okay, they replaced Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones and Xavier Tillman, and they replaced those guys with Scottie Pippen Jr., Jalen Wells, and Zach Edey. That feels like, at best, a lateral move. That's a lateral move. Nothing to be said about improving upon what that 2023 team projected to be when healthy. Of course, that 2023 team, if you include Brandon Clark and Steven Adams, if you want to say, okay, you had Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones, Steven Adams, and Brandon Clark, how have you made that better? You turn that into Zach Edey and Scottie Pippen Jr. and Jalen Wells. Not ideal. You look at the 2022 roster. The players playing alongside Ja and Jaren and Dez, the supporting cast, it was Dylan Brooks, it was Brandon Clark, it was Tyus Jones, it was Anthony Melton, it was Steven Adams, it was Kyle Anderson, and then Xavier Tillman and Zaire Williams also played. Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, Tyus Jones, Steven Adams, Anthony Melton, and Kyle Anderson, those minutes have turned into Santi Aldama minutes, Luke Kennard minutes, Scottie Pippen Jr. minutes, and Zach Edey minutes. We're in year 5. I count it year 5 of trying to build a playoff team around Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. And you can point to the drafting and point out the draft misses. You can point out the draft hits. Of course, like whiffing on Zaire Williams, that wasn't great. Whiffing on Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, not ideal. But you've had so many hits, you could say you made up for it. Like, if you just look at the Grizzlies drafting, it's good. I pointed out before, if you look at the regular season, the team won 48 games. 13 of the top 14 players in minutes played this year were either drafted or signed off of two-way deals. That's astounding. You could say they hit something like 13 out of 20 draft picks. I don't know what the exact number is. That hit rate is amazing. Drafting a player like Jake LaRavia at 19, that's a very good return, except for the fact that it can no longer be called a good return, or it can no longer be called a good pick because you declined his option. Like, however good Jake LaRavia is, that's meaningless because you declined his option and he's gone. You used 2 first-round picks to trade up to get Jake LaRavia. You got like 100 games out of him. He played 0 minutes in the playoffs, and now he's gone. You got a 2028 Sacramento second-round pick for him. Honestly, impressive they got that second-round pick for him because of his weird contract situation. The Kings probably can't re-sign him. But like these moves, like missing on Zaire Williams, it's not a big deal, except for the fact that you salary dumped him. Except for the fact that you used a second-round pick to get off his money and then stretched the Mamadi Diakate contract that came back because you're scared of the luxury tax. And not even that, just because you're scared of maybe it being difficult to get under the luxury tax. You didn't have to get under the luxury tax when you traded Zaire. You could have kept that contract around. All these fake Jimmy Butler rumors to the Grizzlies, maybe Jimmy didn't want to come here. But like, there's no way you believe that the Grizzlies would have paid Jimmy Butler what the Warriors paid Jimmy Butler. Also, if they were serious about trading for a big name like that, they would not have salaried up Zaire Williams' contract because you need that matching salary. I've been over this so many times. The Marcus Smart trade was catastrophic. They tried to make a trade. They tried to replace Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones for less money, that is. They tried to replace those guys by bringing in Marcus Smart. They traded 2 first-round picks, the 2025 pick in 2023, and then the 14th pick in 2024, plus Tyus Jones, a guy who plays all the time, who's always available, doesn't get hurt. You traded that for Marcus Smart, who played 30 games for you. And then you traded the 18th pick in the upcoming draft, just to salary dump that contract. So that is a lot of years of first-round picks that basically you got nothing for. Like, the Melton for Roddy trade was terrible at the time. I called it terrible at the time. It's always been terrible. Yes, you got like a weird 2030 first-round swap out of it. Also, amazing job getting anything for it. But that swap is not a real swap. The 2030 swap they got for David Roddy, someone on social media was pushing back with me, being like, all right, we got a 2030 swap with the Suns. That's awesome. That's not accurate. We have a remote chance at improving our draft pick if the Grizzlies have a better record than the Suns, the Wizards, and the Magic in 2030. It's a 4-way swap. It's not a direct swap. It's a 4-way swap. The odds of it resulting in the Grizzlies moving up by more than 2 slots in the draft, minuscule. Very little chance anything comes of that. But still, the sin to me, it's not missing on draft picks. It's giving up on the draft picks, losing those salary slots, paying to get rid of those slots, and then thinking about what could have been. And maybe that part's not fair in hindsight. A lot of the moves, we got them right in hindsight. The Conchar extension, that's bizarre. Said so at the moment it happened. The Marcus Smart trade, I was optimistic that it would work, but I was like, this price is a little high. Remember, everyone said, why did the Celtics get the first-round picks in this deal? That doesn't make sense, because they got Porzingis too. A lot of the other moves, the Laravia declining of his option, called it weird at the time. The salary dump of Zaire, I'm like, how does this help you long-term? Doesn't make any sense. We do it to keep Luke Kennard. Why would we do all this to keep Luke Kennard? That doesn't make any sense. The Marcus Smart salary dump, well, we can't trade for a player anymore because there's no more matching salary going forward. You're doing all of this just to hope you keep Jaren Jackson Jr.? Like, how are we not still building around the team? And then you look at the draft cost and the acquisition of these things. You're like, we used 3 first-round picks on that, and we still haven't used our MLE in like 5 years. The one free agent signing in the offseason they made was Derrick Rose. This is like in the last 4 years. How have you built a contender and you can't even say you've better set yourself up in the long term because you're in a much worse position than you were years ago? Each year that passes, you are in a worse position than you were in the previous year. Just keeping Jaren's not good enough. Because right now, like, again, it goes back to the ceiling question. What's the ceiling of a team with Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane? It's not very high if your next best player on the team is who? Scottie Pippen? Zach Edey? Santi Aldama? Those guys would not play on many of the contenders. You think those guys are getting minutes on the Celtics? They're getting minutes on the Cavaliers? You are so far behind these teams. I mean, maybe it's the wake-up call. Maybe you could say, and I console myself by saying, all right, if you lose badly to the Thunder, that's the wake-up call. Zach Kleiman can't pretend anymore. But I don't truly think Zach Kleiman thought we were a contender. There's no way he looked at the roster and thought we were a contender. You can also question the Taylor Jenkins firing once again. The move was made for urgency to save this season. Is the season being saved? I mean, maybe they think Isolo's the best option going forward. And again, you're stuck in a bad situation. Isolo was handed a bad hand, if it's a poker analogy. The Thunder are amazing. They are better than you up and down the roster. The issue for the Grizzlies now is, all right, home games, usually home games are better. Can you bounce back in games 3 or 4? Can you even win one? If you win one, everyone obviously was going to feel a lot better about everything. But then going forward, how are you going to build a contender in Memphis, and how have you set yourself up to do that? And I do not like the answers that I come up with. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening, especially listening to an episode after a loss. I really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who came out to the watch party in Nashville. If you want more from me, go to patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. You can join up over there, get some bonus content. Come join that listener Slack. Oh, one final stat. I'm looking through my notes, scrolling through my notes. Through 2 games in this series right now, the fast break point totals, the Grizzlies have 8 fast break points. The Thunder have 48. That's preposterous. Anyways, hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.